There's a strange question in the hip-hop and R&B scene. How did an artist who had global hits, Grammys, historic choreographies, world tours, and enough influence to shape an entire generation end up being treated by the internet for a while as a failed artist? Because man, if you look at Ciara's career numbers, they don't tell that story. For a moment, it seemed inevitable that she would become one of the biggest artists of the 21st century, but then something changed. The media started turning every step of her career into a big joke. The tabloids seemed more interested in destroying her image than analyzing her music.
It's something about me being a man or something like that. It's something else about me being a lesbian or something like that.
And the internet of the 2000s chose the singer as one of its first big targets. And today, in this video, I want to answer a question that everyone pretends not to hear. Why is it that the music industry never lets Ciara become a legend? But before I talk about all that, hey, Action in the Area crew. Listen, if you're not subscribed to this channel yet, man, now's the time. Subscribe, leave a like, turn on notifications. Quick disclaimer here. Every time I bring up a female rapper or a singer, these videos get really low views. So man, I'm making a video about Ciara that a lot of people asked for. It's a video I really wanted to make. Come on, let's smash that like button. Let's share the video. Anyway, so I can bring more female singers. I want to bring more female singers. I want to bring more of the female scene to this channel. So help me out, for God's sake. The t-shirt store link is in the description, along with some related or unrelated Ciara products. Let's start. There's plenty to discuss today. Ciara Princess Harris was born in 1985 and is from Fort Hood, Texas. She's the only child of a military family. Because of her father's military life, right? She spent a good part of her childhood and early teenage years traveling to different places. In other words, she didn't have a permanent home at first. She grew up on military bases, constantly moving between Germany, New York, Utah, California, and Nevada, growing up without a fixed zip code, right? That made it so she didn't keep many friendships early in life, but she had a great ally who traveled with her to all those places, which was music. She grew up immersed in the peak of 90s R&B, right? Which included groups like TLC and Destiny's Child, for example. But there were two figures who were central in inspiring Ciara at the beginning of her career, which were Michael Jackson and his sister Janet Jackson. And looking at them, Ciara realized that music wasn't just about singing, it was a whole visual thing, you know? As if within music there was the aesthetic aspect, the dance, the choreography, what you delivered there on stage to those who were watching you. Then everything changes when the family finally settles in Atlanta, Georgia during Ciara's teenage years. And as you've already seen in several videos I've made on this channel, Atlanta in the 90s and early 2000s wasn't just a city, right? Man, Atlanta was the epicenter of rap, hip-hop, and trap, which was still about to be born there, right? Thanks to some experiments by a few rappers of that time. And also the buzz of black pop culture at the time, and it was there in Atlanta that Ciara, at 14 years old, watched the Destiny's Child special and decided, I'm going to be a singer too. From then on, she didn't just want to be part of the scene anymore. She wanted to lead that scene. For a teenager with a plan mapped out in a notebook, the first step was to throw herself into Atlanta's local scene. Ciara started in the early 2000s as part of a female trio called Her C. The group didn't last long, but it was her laboratory. There she learned about how an artist should behave, the stage presence they need to have at every performance, and life in a music studio, which is no bed of roses. And the most important thing was that if she wanted to build her career the way she had planned on paper, she needed to go solo. So she left the group and went to find her own place on her own. Then she was hired to work as a songwriter for some big R&B artists of that time, like Fantasia and Blue Cantrell, for example. But the big turning point happens when fate puts Ciara in the path of producer Diesel Fa, one of the most brilliant and innovative minds in Georgia at that time. When he heard that sweet girl with a charming voice but military-like discipline, the guy thought, I found a huge diamond in the rough, I just need to polish her and she'll be ready for success. And he wasn't wrong, was he? He hired Ciara for his top-notch production company, Zonuff. Anyone who's into 2000s hip-hop knows that name very well. And from then on, he started working with Ciara to get her straight into the mainstream because her timing was really good, right? The R&B princesses were starting to emerge and she would be one of them. Yeah, I mean, wait a minute, not so much R&B, but a genre that was a bit more masculine. Let's put it this way. In 2003, right after graduating from high school, Ciara signed with Layface Records and she was taken under L.A. Reid's wing. And it's in this environment that she starts working with Lil Jon, who was really popular at that time, both as a producer and as a rapper. Lil Jon was the king of crunk, right? Which is that aggressive, loud, and danceable sound that was dominating the dance floors in the southern United States. And even today, man, crunk is the kind of beat, man, that's mostly for men, man. It's a masculine beat made for guys to rap over that beat. Because anything that's much sharper or that's way too deep as well, it moves away from crunk a little. I don't know if you guys are getting the technical part I'm trying to bring here. But Ciara went completely against that and crunk fit her like a glove, and they decided to experiment, which was to take that same heavy beat and also put the melodic, smooth, and sensual R&B vocals on top. The result of this first experiment you probably know very well, which was the track Guri. Released in the American summer of 2004, the song wasn't just a hit, it was a revolution. Guri was dubbed by the major critics as a subgenre of Crunk'n'B, which was the mix of crunk with R&B. And of course, the acclaim poured in for Ciara. At 19 years old, she wasn't just debuting on the radio, she was topping the Billboard Hot 100 for 7 consecutive weeks. And she was beating out huge names at that time who were dominating the top of the charts. Delivering an anthem of female empowerment, which was even a bit ahead of its time, right? In case you don't know the translation of Guri, it's like Ciara saying she won't give in, she won't open her candy jar if the guy doesn't show respect. Yeah, I think you kind of get the reference, right? Then in September 2004, she released her debut album, which was also called Guri. Right after that, she released the track 1-2 Step, her legendary collaboration with Missy Elliott. It's worth remembering that 1-2 Step is heavily based on the aesthetic of Planet Rock by Africa Bambaataa, may he rest in peace. The song wasn't just catchy, the skating rink went viral back when YouTube barely even existed. The song blew up worldwide and reached number 2 on the Billboard Hot 100, and man, it's one of the signature tracks for both Ciara and Missy Elliott to this day. And to complete this golden trio from Ciara's debut, she also released another single, which was a collaboration with Ludacris. In fact, the first of many collaborations. I don't need to say this song was another chart hit. And at 19 years old, man, Ciara had broken a huge record by having her first 3 singles at the top, you know? The Princess of Seawalk had arrived and the music industry seemed to have found its new queen. But the higher Ciara climbed, the more the old internet tried to bring her down, and this was already happening at the start of her career. Around 2005 to 2006 more or less, Ciara became the target of one of the biggest fake news and digital defamation campaigns against an artist. That's because some rumors started circulating on the internet that Ciara was actually a trans woman. The internet used her height, her physical athletic build, and her striking features to try to make fun of her. And I say make fun of because this topic wasn't treated with respect back then. People really used it to mock Ciara. And at the time, man, tabloids and serious newspapers would run these headlines in their outlets, right? And they helped reinforce this idea even more. So Ciara had to, still very young, go public on radio and TV shows to try to say that all of this was just a big fake news story. It was a really invasive campaign, you know, trying to debunk something that the internet made up. But besides answering in interviews, Ciara would give her answer through music. That's when, in 2006, she came out with the ambitious album, Ciara, The Evolution. The album title already basically showed the kind of battle Ciara wanted to address, which was, she knew very well what she was doing, and the first single was a huge hit on a colossal scale, which was the song Get Up, If You Remember, You Remember. The song, which was her feature with Chamillionaire, was included in the soundtrack of the movie Step Up. And man, the music video with a futuristic aesthetic showed everyone that gravity didn't apply to Ciara's legs. Next, she delivered Promise, a slow and very sensual R&B that shocked the traditional American family. there. She wasn't just dancing, she was floating. And the music video for this song promised, with that unsettling vibe, the suspended microphone, and the contortion-like movements, proved that she had really inherited Janet Jackson's throne. And then, right after came what I, Gerson Saldanha, personally believe is Ciara's signature song here in Brazil, at least back then, right? Which was the song Like a Boy. This song has a similar idea to Goodies, right? Which is talking about female empowerment. But in this case, she wore men's clothes and acted like a man throughout the whole video to criticize male hypocrisy. Some people at that time also said it was a way for Ciara to respond to those criticisms I mentioned to you about people on the internet saying she's a trans woman. But Like a Boy is now one of the most memorable songs of Ciara's career and is part of the fond memories of a lot of people I know.
What if I had a thing on the side?
And to wrap up, the last single from this album was the song Leave Me Alone, which was a collaboration with 50 Cent, with whom she had a little fling at that time, but we'll talk about him quickly in a moment. The album The Evolution debuted at #1 on the Billboard 200 at the time. Ciara had the hits, the sales, the awards, and street respect. She was, without a doubt, one of the best performers of her generation. But beyond that, you know, at the height of the 2000s, the name Ciara was a matter of prestige, you know? Having a feature with Ciara was a big deal, you know? You knew the song was going to be taken to the next level. And the features she did for other artists also became very iconic and very famous. Like, for example, on the song Lose Control by Missy Elliott, which even earned a Grammy for both artists. And the mega hit Like You with Bow Wow. And this strength on the charts translated into a powerful stage presence, so much so that everyone wanted Ciara on their tours. She was invited to open for Rihanna's Good Girl Gone Bad tour on its European leg, and the legendary The Circus tour starring Britney Spears. And this, even though it seems common nowadays, back in the 2000s was really breaking the mold, you know, because man, Britney Spears was pop, you know, Ciara is crunk, hip hop, rap, R&B, they're completely different worlds, but it's exactly at that point when she was on top of the world that Ciara's momentum started to stall. In 2008, Ciara was ready to take the next step toward becoming a living legend. And the plan was the album Fantasy Ride, an ambitious project that was originally going to be a triple album structured around alter egos that represented her different musical sides. But here, man, the machine started to fail, and it wasn't even her fault. It was the internet era, you know, people consuming music online. The dynamic of how artists released music was changing, and dozens of tracks originally recorded for Fantasy Ride started leaking on the internet. The label's plans went down the drain, and they had to postpone Fantasy Ride for months and months, breaking the frantic pace that Ciara had been keeping since 2004. Man, she even released a song that made some noise back then, which was that Never Ever, which was forgotten by Americans, but here in Brazil it was very well remembered. I think much of it was due to the sample and her interpolation of the Simply Red song. But after the reins were gradually taken, Ciara took back control of things. And in 2009, she teamed up with the guy who was producing Fantasy Ride with her, Justin Timberlake, and they released the track Love, Sex, and Magic. The song was a huge success, reaching the global top 10 and earning her a Grammy nomination. The music video was a show on its own too, man. That play of lights between her and Justin Timberlake, the chemistry between the two of them. Teenage Gerson even thought they were dating.
I'm not sure, just you in the crowd, doing tricks you never seen.
But instead of applauding the artist's resilience, the media started to bash Ciara more and more. Instead of the internet tabloids focusing on Ciara's reinvention, you know, for bringing out new work in such a short time, they focused on the album's sales, which, let's be honest, weren't among her biggest successes. Yeah, even though Love, Sex, and Magic played a lot here in Brazil, man, Fantasy Ride, and the media that wasn't talking about her album flopping was talking about comparisons with other artists, especially Rihanna and Beyonce. Man, it was a really weird thing back then. It was like the industry could only have one black woman singing, and at the peak of success. Here's how it went. If Beyonce released a less successful project while Ciara and Rihanna did a bit better, one would be praised, another seen as average, and the third labeled a flop. And that dynamic, that whole thing, man, it lasted for a good part of the second half of the 2000s, you know? And usually the one who got the worst of it in this competition was Ciara, which was a bit contradictory, right? Because there were people who saw inspirations in Beyonce's and Rihanna's work that came from Ciara. Like, for example, when Beyonce released the song If I Were a Boy in 2008, a lot of people compared it to like a boy, you know? The idea of the song was similar. The music video was in black and white. Beyonce was also playing a man in that video anyway. Beyonce herself has said several times that she has always admired Ciara. And besides, the other R&B singers from that time still really look up to Ciara a lot. So guys, the competition was really just on the internet and in the newspapers. To make things worse, guys, Ciara's relationship with Jive Records, her label at the time, really soured with her next studio album, Basic Instinct, which came out in 2010. Even delivering the song Ride, which was a feature with Ludacris, and yes, it had some relative success. Mixing that sensual R&B and technically very, very hard to sing, the label simply refused to promote this track on American radio, and the music video was even banned from some TV channels for being considered too sensual. And the label did nothing to defend Ciara. The singer was then in a checkmate situation. She had artistic vision, she had a loyal audience, but her own label and the major media outlets decided to cut off investment and positive coverage. They wanted Ciara to accept taking a back seat in music. However, she had another quality that always made the media keep their eyes on her. Instead of discussing the injustices from the label or the brilliance of her songs and choreography, the tabloids preferred to reduce Ciara to who she was dating. Well, as I mentioned to you, back at the beginning of Ciara's career, going back quickly, she had a relationship with Bow Wow. And then they mocked Ciara for being, let's put it in quotes, older than Bow Wow. If I recall, she's just 2 years older than Bow Wow, but people would say she was too old for dating younger guys. That's what I remember. I browsed Orkut and saw those comments here. Imagine how it was elsewhere. A few years later, she had that mysterious relationship with 50 Cent. That relationship was full of ups and downs, and it really made Ciara one of the muses of hip-hop. But at the time, the media seemed more interested in getting controversial statements from both her and 50 Cent than actually diving into their music, especially Ciara's, and trying to understand the genius behind each verse. But the peak of this coverage of Ciara's relationships actually started to happen during the Basie Kingston era, which is when the singer crossed paths with none other than the rapper Future. In 2013, while trying to rebuild herself artistically with her acclaimed self-titled album, Ciara, which featured the smash hit Body Power, including that track produced by Future. They knew each other, they got closer, started a relationship, which later turned into an involuntary reality show.
I won't lie, it's amazing.
What started as a high-profile engagement quickly turned into a public trench warfare after the birth of their child, and the breakup was fueled by rumors of his infidelity. That's when the couple's dirty laundry became a feast for the tabloids and the internet. Future was the first to open fire against Ciara. In classic interviews on radio shows like The Breakfast Club, the rapper openly criticized the fact that Ciara had moved on with her life and allowed her new boyfriend, the football player Rochelle Wilson, to spend time with and be photographed with little baby Future. Future even went on the internet, on Twitter, and called Ciara all sorts of things, including controlling, complaining about child support payments, and the lawyers involved in resolving the situation. Ciara, however, responded differently. In a remarkable interview on CBS This Morning, Ciara responded to the criticism with a very precise logic, pointing out the double standard of the media and her ex. Open quotes here, man, because Ciara is about to throw shade everywhere. It's a double standard. When we were together, I took care of his kids right at the beginning of our relationship, because when a real man takes care of a child, that's a problem. Shouldn't you want someone who loves your child? Close quotes. Man, that shut a lot of people up, because at that time, people painted Ciara either as bitter or as the woman who got dumped, or like the woman who's trying to get her ex's attention. There were a lot of things like that against her. But in this video, I'm bringing Ciara's point of view. But in the video I made about Future here on the channel, we have a documentary about Future. I talk about about this story from Future's perspective. So, when this video is over, watch the Future video to understand both sides of the story. The situation got so extreme, man, that Ciara ended up suing Future for defamation and slander because of the constant attacks she was suffering on the internet. The press was dumping tons and tons of articles talking about this messy breakup and also about Ciara's legal battles with Future, reducing one of the greatest performances of her generation to just clickbait controversy. But, as you guys must have understood throughout this whole video, Ciara was raised with military discipline. So, playing the victim was something she was never going to accept, no way. The first big turning point happened in the singer's professional life. Tired of having her albums shelved and forgotten by the record label, she decided to take a step that was very courageous on her part. She went public and exposed the whole problem. In an open outburst on social media, she exposed the negligence of Jive Records. She revealed that she was taking money out of her own pocket to finance her music videos, as happened with the iconic Ride. And the company was also refusing to support her, and she publicly asked to be released from this contract. Man, to me it seemed like she preferred the risk of the unknown over staying good and pitiful for the rest of her career. When she finally got her freedom from the label, the industry, the tabloids, and the internet noticed a very dangerous pattern with Ciara. She didn't need any of them for her career to move forward, and then anyone who was waiting for any little thing to attack her, say she flopped and all that, got proven wrong in 2018. Now, as a completely independent artist and owner of her own label, Beauty Marks Entertainment, when Ciara left the label, they released the master tapes she had recorded to her without charging her anything. Then she takes one of them and decides to release it. What was just a master became a big hit. I'm talking about her. Let me know. Level up. She didn't need millions of dollars, a big corporation, or anything huge to make it happen. The frantic beat, the insane choreography, man, the way she sings, dude, it automatically went viral on its own, you know? I mean, not completely on its own, right? Because there was that Level Up challenge where celebrities and other artists did their little dances back in a pre-TikTok era, and that helped promote the song even more. So Level Up became a global anthem of overcoming and self-love for a lot of people. And the lyrics were a direct response to everything she had been through. There's a part where she says, "Shout out to my haters, you made me do it better." And with that, she was letting the world know that she had leveled up. The independent success of Level Up opened the doors for a Ciara who was even more experimental on the album Beauty Marks. And knowing that she no longer had to answer to any suit, any tabloid, or anyone, she started to open her heart and her horizons to other markets that consumed her music and where she had really passionate fans. I think you already know which country I'm talking about, right? It's Brazil, of course. And the peak of this, I think in 2019, the Brazilian audience went crazy when she announced that she would sing a song featuring Isa and the trio Major Lazer. And then the track Eva Evapora came out, which was a real cultural event, let's put it that way. Ciara didn't just embrace the peripheral rhythm here in Brazil, she dove headfirst into Brazilian culture. In a music video shot in the United States desert, she kind of left everyone speechless, doing some pretty complicated choreography alongside Isa. And I think what shocked everyone the most was seeing Ciara singing in Portuguese. Hey. And back then, a lot of people here in Brazil were saying that Ciara was just doing it for marketing, but knowing Ciara's story, man, I knew there was no way that was true. She really likes us here. In Brazil, there are many Ciara fans, and she always knew that. She came to the country, experienced the Rio Carnival, wore the national team jersey, and showed deep and genuine respect for Brazilian artists and fans. And then, after that era, Ciara kept releasing some work showing a lot of artistic maturity, and man, just like Vim, her art kept getting better over time. She released the dance track Jump in 2022. And the delightful collaboration How We Roll with Chris Brown in 2023. Proving that her feel for classic R&B remained intact, and then came the EP Sissy, where she revisits her roots without losing her freshness. Each music release by Ciara, besides feeding her longtime audience that's been following her since 2004, man, she managed to help bring a new generation to enjoy her work. And with that, she proved the classic phrase that Gerson Saldanha always says here on this channel: if you have fans, you don't need traditional media. Saldanha, Gerson Saldanha. So guys, in the end, answering the complex question, why did the media never let Ciara become a legend, actually becomes a pretty simple task for us here. Traditional media, the big corporations, and even part of the internet have always wanted artists they could control, shape, or trap in narratives of rivalry and suffering. When Ciara goes against all of that and stands up to the system, they tried every possible way to erase her, but history, the charts, and success don't lie. Ciara paved the way for a whole new generation of performers who combine singing, dancing, and high-level performance. She actually never needed any media outlet to stamp her as a legend or for the radio to validate her worth. By taking control of her own masters, creating her independent label, and building a family with Russell Wilson, just like she always wanted, and by maintaining the respect of the world, including Brazil, Ciara proved that the highest level an artist can reach in their career is their own freedom. And in the end, guys, all of this that I mentioned, tabloids, radio, media, record label, they always tried to boycott Ciara, and they didn't let her become a legend by their standards, because Ciara knew she was something much greater than all of that. And I'll even tell you guys, she became an artist impossible to control. Because they might even decide who gets all the investments and the spotlight, but it's time that decides who leaves a legacy. But that's just the father's opinion. I want to hear from you guys. Leave your comments below. Don't forget, hit the like button, man. Hey, let's share these videos about women in the arts, because there's a lot for us to talk about on this channel. Anyway, the father is signing off for now. A big hug from Gerson Saldanha. See you in our next video, and thanks.